Hi and welcome back to another Blue Protocol video. Today I'm going to cover the best battle imagines for each class. Please note that this list is my personal subjective take and is based off the performance for endgame content, which for the closed beta test case are nightmare dungeons. Balances are very likely to happen, so this tier list may or may not be applicable to launch. Let's get started. Now I'm going through this video assuming you have basic understanding on what each imagine does. If not, feel free to visit this video I made regarding what each battle imagine does. Now, I'll first like to talk a little bit about theory crafting. For example, Mr. Spider here is an all-rounded imagine that provides mastery buffs to you, the caster. Now, what sort of battle imagines do you think would be introduced in the future that are more powerful to entice players to farm or swipe for it? That's right. It's Mr. Spider here, but more effects and buffs, not only to you, but to the entire team. That is exactly what the current endgame of the original Blue Protocol was. Party-wide buffs that last about 20 to 30 seconds with a 60-second cooldown. This results in a 30 to 60 second meta in Japan Blue Protocol, where players activate their imagines based on the timing on the in-game clock, rotating buffs to ensure the teammates are always receiving buffs. Feel free to watch endgame content of Protocol Japan here if you're interested. Of course, we do not have that many team buffs in the game right now, so we prioritize team buffs to be held by supports, while DPS hold self-buffing imagines. That's the backbone context of how we are constructing the tier list for Blue Protocol Star Resonance. Before starting, a quick shout out to the various creators that helped me with regarding classes that I don't main. Let's get started. For the Mage class, the Mook leader gives up to 45% crit damage passively, with even more crit buffs on activation of the active skill. You can use the Mook leader up to 2 times, meaning very high uptime for most content. Though I would say that this is the most universal DPS imagine, and currently should be prioritized over other stats like haste and mastery. Spider comes next as it gives a mastery bonus, and hence is the next best imagine for boosting damage. Flying Fish passive and active skills give haste, which shortens casting time. This also means shooting out more ice beams. Haste also increases Mage energy regen, which is your source of damage for ice beam. However, it is currently bugged in the beta, so we'll have to see its performance during launch. Alvera is a luxury option and does a small one-time pull to gather enemies. She has a very short cooldown, does damage, and the cooldown skill depends on how many mobs were killed by it after being tagged by the imagine. This makes the imagine spammable, and the only downside is that it doesn't do much against bosses without ads. And because of the fact that every nightmare dungeon has trash mobs, she is ranked pretty high in other classes other than the Mage class, because the Mage has already a low cooldown skill for gathering and can benefit more from DPS from either Spider or Flying Fish. Next, the Goldfang is mainly a stat stick here. Its active increases thunder damage, which the Frost Mage does not use. However, it does have a coordinated attack, which isn't that amazing, but it is mobile. The Flame Ogre gives shields and heals, while the Frost Ogre is able to freeze enemies hit. For purple imagines, the Mook Hunter is really good for Mage, as you can gain up to a 30% attack buff consistently with your Ice Beam. Mook Captain gives crit buffs, and since crit is king for DPS during the CBT, so naturally it's a good option for the Mage. The Lizard Man has a active and passive skill for ice damage bonus, which is a decent alternative. Fire Goblin is an early game imagine that you can farm early and has a passive and active skill to increase your intelligence bonus. And it benefits both mages and healers if you are deciding to play the Verdant Oracle as a second class. Jungle Goblin Warrior gives a self-attack buff, but its strength bonus does not help the Frost Mage at all, hence why it's ranked lower on the list. For the Marksman class, the first few options are ranked similarly for the same reasons as the Frost Mage. Alvera is ranked slightly higher due to the lack of gathering skills for the Marksman aside from the ultimate that has a 60 seconds cooldown. For the Purple Imagines, the Lightning Ball provides a light damage bonus, which is more beneficial to the Marksman class, hence it is ranked higher here. And the Bandit Scout Captain is also ranked higher for the Marksman class, as it is a class that utilizes agility. And since the Imagine gives a passive and active skill bonus for agility. For the Stormblade, the Gold Fang is ranked higher here, as the Stormblade can make use of its thunder damage buffs via its active skill. Again, Alvera is ranked higher here due to the lack of gathering skills for the class outside of a small pool from the ultimate. The Flame Ogre is also bumped up here because it is a melee class and will appreciate heals or shields over a ranged class. For the Purple Imagines, the Mook Berserker is a good choice to increase thunder damage for the Stormblade. The Bandit Scout Captain is a good choice here for the agility boost on the active and passive skills. The Mook Hunter, however, is dropped to the B tier because it is slightly difficult to build stacks on this class. For the Wind Knight class, the Gold Imagines are ranked similarly to the previous DPS builds. Similarly to the Stormblade, Alvera is ranked higher here due to the lack of gathering skills for the Wind Knight class. The Wind Knight class is able to use the Flying Fish because of the increased attack speed and recovery speed. Hurricane Goblin Warrior is a good choice to increase the wind damage for Wind Knight. The Jungle Goblin Warrior gives a self-attack buff, and its passive strength bonus does help the Wind Knight class, hence is ranked higher on this list. The Mook Hunter is dropped to B tier because it's slightly difficult to build stacks on this class. For tanks, as mentioned previously, we will be focusing on supporting Imagines to boost our team's DPS. Starting off with Tina. Tina can reduce your team's cooldown up to 15 seconds at 100% for 15 seconds. Imagine how much more skills can be pushed out within that window of time. For example, 6 seconds Vortex for the Mage to recover ice energy sounds great. The Bandit is your traditional team attack buff that has a large AoE for its buff radius. The Hive, it is a debuff and is usually used at the bosses to make them take 20% more damage. The buffs do not stack, so you might have to coordinate with your team to use hives at different intervals to maximize the benefits of this Imagine. The Thunder Ogre causes passive thunder damage to nearby enemies. This can happen the more often that you are hit, which is a perfect Imagine for tanks. Next, we have our good old Mook leader. While tanks aren't supposed to really focus on damage, but their healing skills and healing circle can crit, giving you more heals. Alvera is here as an option to gather enemies and deal some damage. And lastly, the Flame Ogre is here for the shields and heals, not that you really need them for more survivability. For situational Imagines, Aronia is a luxury option as a tank to carry. In more difficult fights where your team might wipe, you could keep yourself alive with an invulnerability skill and resurrect your teammates. In theory, this could increase your DPS against the boss if your team focuses on the boss and ignores the boss mechanics and die and subsequently get revived by you. However, I've yet to test it personally as it is expensive to craft one. Next, TATA has a similar application of keeping the team alive up to 8 seconds. However, he has a downside of having a 2-second animation after activating the skill. So, it will only be good on bosses that you can preemptively tell that is going to do a party-wide mechanic. King mode here allows for healing, but more importantly, dispelling debuffs. Currently in the game, there are no punishing status effects, but there do exist these mechanics in Blue Protocol Japan where you can be feared and petrified. So, the more punishing debuffs that exist later in the game, the more useful this Imagine will be. Next, for Purple Imagines, the Mook Captain here helps with crits for your heals and damage. The Elite Goblin Guard is here as a weaker version of the Hive, typically used at bosses to reduce their defense. The Bear is used here as a last option for shield breaking. The problem with the Bear is that it transforms you into the bear, meaning you can't do anything until your attack animation is completed. Instead of using the Imagine, you probably can contribute to the shield breaking of the boss with your own skills and attacks, and perhaps even use another Imagine while you're at it. Now, for Healer Imagines, they are almost identical to the Tank Imagines, with the exception of Thunder Ogre that is being removed from the list because ideally you do not want to be taunting and making enemies attack you to proc more thunder damage. Flying Fish is here as well as an option to reduce your cast time for your heals. For Purple Imagines, it is very similar to tanks aside from the Fire Goblin, which increases your intelligence passively and actively, meaning more heals for you and your team. And that's it. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me in the comments and I'll try my best to answer them. You can also grab the infographics of these tier lists in the YouTube post section of my YouTube channel. I'll catch you in the next video. Until then, peace.